All right, welcome back everybody to the brain injury discussion. This is Jay, and today we're going to be talking about multiple head trauma. We have probably heard about how multiple head trauma at some point in our life. It might have been on a TV show, but let's get into the facts and let's get a nice overview of about 100 years. Dementia pugilistica, which if we break down this word, prior to that, it was called punch drunk, which is kind of a blatant uh, you know, a blatant name, but they changed it in 1937 to dementia pugilistica. Dementia is Latin for like losing oneself or mind. Pugilistica is kind of like being punched, or pugil is a weapon. Um, so dementia, it comes from the Latin word demens, which is where we get the word demented. So common among fighting professions. And as you can see here, we have a boxer. He's not wearing anything from the neck up. That might be a problem. And so one of the things they started realizing is they can only really do much post-mortem or after the said boxer or person with brain injury was dead, or had passed away. But they had noticed some trends, which again might be kind of interesting. Problems with memory, cognition, and of course, an altered mental status, which those three tend to go hand in hand with each other or brain to brain with each other. So, as we can see, he's wearing boxing gloves, he's wearing, shorts, but he's not wearing anything on his head. So, and chances are he's probably getting hit on that head a lot. And again, they knew about this prior to 1937. They knew about this prior to like 100 years ago, and they knew about it. They didn't have the advanced technology that we do today. So, but let's see about something that we might be more familiar with in the modern day, and that is CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now, if you have been paying attention to the news about maybe 10, 12 years ago, you might have seen CTE come up a lot when it came to certain sports arenas, most particularly those that were kind of dangerous. And what we know about CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is that it's very common in certain professions, like boxers, like military, contact sports like football, even NASCAR, even um, multiple fighting. So, contact sports, soccer is another one of those where you're repeatedly damaging the head via multiple blows, multiple impacts, multiple, even in a short time frame. And it is similarly described with dementia pugilistica in the previous slide. So, this is kind of that overlap of what used to be called dementia pugilistica is now more referred to as, or more examined as, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And the damage starts very local, but then it becomes progressive as time goes on. So it starts small and then goes in. Now, this image we have here, it's the normal brain. So this is a good brain. This is a healthy brain. But if we look at what the advanced, chronic traumatic encephalopathy or the advanced CTE, that is a very unhealthy brain. I don't think you have to be a medical expert or an anatomy specialist to tell the difference, not only in the size of just generally, but also look at the different color and the health of it. It just doesn't look that healthy. And so that's what happens in probably more severe cases. But you start seeing damage to the brain, damage to the gray matter, and then the white matter. Gray matter being the areas that basically show up gray, and the white matter more interior areas. But you see that as kind of a dangerous area. And so, what does this lead to? Well, this 1989 study found a few different things, but we saw not just damage to the brain, but also to vascular structures. Now, those vascular structures are what's going to be taking those nutrients, that protein, that energy, that glucose, and also the fluid to the brain to nourish the brain, but it also recovers the brain, builds the brain. If the damage is there to the vascular structures, you're not going to be getting quite as much of that necessary nutrients. Also, we're talking meninges or the brain layers. Obviously, external hits would probably make sense to damage these areas, especially if we're considering the skull and what layers are between the cranium and the actual brain itself. This article pointed out that there were present bleeds, so minor and major bleeds. Major bleeds obviously probably led to postmortem analysis, but there were also evidence of minor bleeds from these multiple blows to the head. And so you might think, okay, every time I get a blow to the head, is it going to result in a bleed? Maybe not. But if it's severe enough, it might, and it might have gone under the radar because the human body, for for the way it's designed, can compensate up to a certain point. And what we really see with that is that the body is able to create that compensatory response in spite of even multiple head blows. But at some point, there might be some decompensation. And this article really noted something called siderosis. What is siderosis? It's iron buildup, and this was from the study that is cited right there. Now, siderosis is iron buildup, and with iron buildup, just like with anything, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Now, this is talking about severe iron buildup, and they found this very caused and very causation with those that were postmortem analysis to those that have had multiple head trauma that we might consider as chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, dementia pugilistica. But they noticed that there was a lot of iron buildup. And of course, with CTE, if we go back to that other slide, we can see that the color has changed and there's tau proteins that are being expended and released in that brain. So that's what's causing a lot of that damage. And so when we look at the effects of it, it's not necessarily just that the brain is being bruised, but there might be buildup of other things going on, including the tau proteins. And this could go on for days. This talk could go on for days, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. So, what can be done? Well, obviously, prevention. So, my former profession in the Navy, you're supposed to wear your helmet in certain times, especially when you're operating a motor vehicle, especially when you're in a combat zone. Um, if you are in football, you're given a helmet for a reason. You don't see people playing without a helmet. So that is prevention, and also it is mitigatory. So we want to mitigate the factors. We want to reduce the external factors that might cause that multiple head trauma, and we also want to prevent that head trauma from making contact with that head. So again, helmets are a great thing. Currently, as of 2024, again, this is as far as the information goes. This could change actually very soon, but right now it's mainly a post-mortem confirmation, post-mortem or after someone has passed away. And again, that could change very soon because the Concussion Legacy Foundation, shout out to them. They definitely are working on trying to find this in a living person. So, and we also got to take into account what are the symptoms and what are the lifestyle changes. Well, obviously, a good diet is always good, but you want to fuel that brain. You want to give that brain nutrients. That brain is a car engine that is way more complex. It's going to need the proper fuel to run and run properly. Exercise. Again, exercise creates good blood flow to the brain. We want good blood flow to the brain. And of course, if someone is in, shall we say, one of those occupations, like let's say they were in the Navy, like myself, um, afterwards, maybe get them into a position or, give them some rehabilitation and occupational therapy to get them into a place like vocational rehab so that way they can find a profession that doesn't put their brain at risk. And as we can see, um, we have here some advanced scanning. So this advanced scanning is very interesting, right? We see the control brain. That looks healthy, right? We see CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. We see some holes there. And then we see Alzheimer's, and we can kind of see the correlation. Now, again, Alzheimer's is not necessarily a brain injury. CTE is, in fact, a brain injury. So there is some similarity, there's some overlap. Maybe CTE looks a lot like Alzheimer's in its advanced stages. And those are things that maybe not only clinicians should be aware of, but maybe we should be aware of as well. Because it's not just that the person is going crazy, it could be the result of that multiple head trauma. And so, what does this lead me to conclude? Well, repeated head trauma is definitely a cause of injuries, but it's certainly one that we want to prevent. And so it causes these long-term illnesses that either look like or function like Alzheimer's or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now, again, dementia pugilistica, punch drunk, and now CTE, all of that is now been out in the news, thankfully, due to the research of the Concussion Legacy Foundation and others to kind of identify causes of death of, like, let's say, football players. But it's also present in like NASCAR, soccer, military. These multiple head traumas can be caused by a number of different things, and it results into long-term illnesses. Repeated head trauma can be identifiable, but it can also be hard to treat. It might be symptomatic treatment because unfortunately there's no miracle cure. Now, if there was a miracle cure, then we would probably be talking about it. But every brain injury is unique. That's what they tell you when you become a brain injury case manager. Every brain injury is specifically unique to the person. And so aside from just being hit on the head multiple times, it's usually accompanied by secondary illness, like was seen in that case in 1989. They were talking about the siderosis. But maybe there are also other complications involved that aren't necessarily just physical, but it could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be other kinds of injuries as well. And again, certain professions are just at risk. Again, military, I'm passionate about the military because I was in there, but football, NASCAR, soccer, um, combat sports, all of that can put you at a bigger risk of having to uh, acquire multiple head trauma. And that's why it's kind of important to know what is CTE, what is dementia pugilistica slash punch drunk, and does it differ from Alzheimer's? Absolutely, yes. But if we can start identifying those risky professions, we can start implementing those prevention measures, implementing those mitigation measures, and then we could possibly save some more brains. But with that being said, I hope this was informative. Of course, there are my references. You can find them in the description below. We would love it if you would like and subscribe. Also, leave a comment if you have a topic you would like us to cover. Have a great day, everybody.